Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace be upon you all, and welcome to this new live stream of our evolution course. First, I'd like to remind you, if you're not formally on the evolution course, it's okay. You can just be here and ask your questions on the live chat, but I will always give priority to those who are subscribed to the course. How do you subscribe to the course? Just look at the website link. It's just findingtruthchannel.com/courses/is-evolution true or false. You can go there, register to the website, and then enroll to the course, or while doing the enrollment to the course, it will also register to the website. Today, we are going to talk about novelty. And novelty means something new. So we see all those creatures around us, and we know that there is so many differences, so many radical differences between very different creatures. And the question we're asking here is whether this novelty is explainable or not by the theory of evolution mechanisms. And the theory of evolution is, of course, following methodological naturalism, which is spawned by philosophical naturalism, which means that there has to be a natural explanation for any aspect of nature, which includes living things, of course. And hence, the primary mechanism of this theory is essentially natural selection acting upon random mutations. So is it possible for random mutations to cause novel features? So novel features can be like, if essentially the appearance of very complicated unicellular beings like bacteria from Luca, the appearance of eukaryotes, which are essentially unicellular organisms that are also the same cell type of our cells as human beings, and actually for all the animals and plants, their cells are called eukaryotic cells, which are way more complicated and has a myriad of organelles and structures that are not available in prokaryotes. And then from unicellular eukaryotes, life moved into multicellularity. Can multicellularity be explained by random mutations acted upon by natural selection? The answer is no. And the appearance of mammals and the appearance of the so many complex structures in animals and plants, like eyes, like hearing, smelling, etc. All those systems, circulatory systems, digestive systems. Can all of this be essentially generated by just random mutation acted upon by natural selection? And the answer keeps to be no over and over again. I would urge you, if you have not already, to watch this debate that you can find on the channel, which is the pretext for this session number 6, which is with an evolutionary biologist and actually a university professor who actually teaches evolutionary biology. And it is about whether evolution or Darwinian mechanisms can actually explain novelty. And now let me give you a little presentation to explain more. It doesn't seem to work. Just a second. So we ask the question of whether novelty can be explained by random mutations acted upon by natural selection. And let's see. So this is Alfred Whitehead, and he wrote a book called Science and the Modern World. This was somewhere in the 50s. And he says this, he says, the aboriginal stuff or material from which a materialistic philosophy starts is incapable of evolution. This material is in itself the ultimate substance. Evolution on the materialistic theory is reduced to the role of being another word for the description of the changes of the external relations between portions of matter. There is nothing to evolve because one set of external relations is as good as any other set of external relations. There can be merely change, purposeless, and unprogressive. But the whole point of the modern doctrine is the evolution of complex organisms from antecedent states of less complex organisms. So he's wondering, how can a more complex structure arrive from a less complex structure or less complex organism? He says, the doctrine thus cries aloud for a conception of organism as fundamental for nature. It also requires an underlying activity, a substantial activity expressing itself in individual embodiments and evolving in achievements of organism. The organism is a unity of emergent value, a real fusion of the character of eternal objects, pure possibilities emerging for its own sake. And then he goes along saying this. So he says, but there is another factor in evolution which is not in the least explained by the doctrine of the survival of the fittest. It is, why has the trend of evolution been upwards? So he's asking this interesting question. Why do we have creatures that are more and more complicated? Why is there this progressive complexity? Why do we eventually arrive after billions of years to the human being? Why didn't it just stay unicellular? So he says the fact that organic species have been produced from inorganic distributions of matter, and the fact that in the lapse of time organic species of higher and higher types have evolved are not in the least explained by any doctrine of adaptation to the environment or of struggle. And we can ponder upon this. We can think together that something that is simple and versatile as bacteria actually has won all its battles against the environment, while so many much complex and much bigger animals have gone extinct. So the question remains, if this theory is about the survival of the fittest, if this theory is about adaptation and reaction to the environment, why would there be anything beyond bacteria? Bacteria is very, very successful. We try to kill bacteria in any possible way and it doesn't die. It shows all those features that it has hidden, and it will exhibit those features to counteract all its challenges. Now, this has been in the 50s. Has this changed? Let's look at this prominent scientist, Gerd Muller, who is a Swiss scientist, and he gave the opening presentation for the Royal Society meeting in 2016. And in his notes, I have actually put for you in the description of the live stream the link to his like 45 minutes speech or presentation. I will try to find the presentation itself, not only the speech. And I will also post the same to the course website. So if you are not already registered to the course, please formally register to the course and you have access to the whole material. Everything I do is free anyway. So let's see, like 60 or 70 more years after Whitehead, what is Gerd Muller telling us in the Royal Society meeting in 2016? He says this. This is a summary of what he said that you can actually listen yourself. And he was talking about the problems with modern synthesis. And he then says, okay, let's now develop something new. Let's call it extended modern synthesis. Modern synthesis is the form of neo-Darwinism, which combines a Mendelian inheritance with the Darwinian ideology with population genetics. And he's saying, well, no, this cannot explain what we see after all the developments that we have seen. And the very big problem that he is citing over and over again is novelty. And he refers to 3 types of novelty as very challenging to the theory. And then the rest of his presentation is suggesting that other new fields of study of biology and other disciplines can, with time, give more explanations, like developmental biology or evolutionary developmental evolution of embryos, for example, etc. Those can give insights into how evolution works. But he mentions 3 aspects. Number 1, phenotypic complexity, things like eyes, ears, body plans. That's to say, the anatomical and structural features of living creatures. How come we have something as complicated as an eye? But not only the eye. It's the eye with all these magnificent components it has, the lens, the retina, the fluid that is very crystal clear, the muscles, the eyelids, the muscles that move the lens, what is happening on the retina or the rods and all the cones, and then this nerve that goes to the brain, and then the fact that the brain actually interprets those electric signals coming from the eye and gives us this 3D vision inside. This is completely amazing. How did such a system come together? And he says that these things cannot be actually explained by natural selection acting upon random mutations. The second thing is phenotypic novelty. This is the origin of new forms throughout the history of life. For example, most of the mammals we see around us have happened in something called the mammalian radiation, 66 million years ago, in which the major orders of mammals, such as cetaceans, bats, carnivores, entered the fossil record. Of course, the Cambrian explosion is the most horrific event towards the theory of evolution. This happened 540 million years ago, and it lasted for like some 10 to 25, the explosion part, years, where completely novel body plans and completely novel creatures have suddenly, 10 million years is nothing versus the billions of years that evolutionary history talks about. And suddenly we have everything. So this process of gradual, one small mutation by one small mutation is not what is there in the fossil record altogether. How can this phenotype is the body feature or the external features? How can all of this occur? And essentially this leads to number 3, the non-gradual forms or modes of transition. We have sudden and abrupt discontinuities in the fossil record that reflect the 2 things above. And even in 2018, things are not that better. So we have de novo genes being mapped and discovered. And I am putting on the screen all those papers that are talking about de novo genes found and confirmed since 2006. And this is Chicago, July 6 to 10, conference on intelligent systems for molecular biology. And those have been confirmed by proteomics. So those are genes that do deliver transcribed proteins. And the question is, how do those appear? Are they really appearing by random mutation, which is acted upon by natural selection? So random mutation means that there is an existing gene and small changes happen to that gene that will hence cause it to have a little different protein. And if the protein is beneficial, then natural selection will favor it, and this feature will be fixed in the population. But the problem with de novo genes, that if the gene is produced in this type, it will produce something called homology that you can trace, because there is a small change versus a pre-existing gene in the previous species or the previous ancestor. So you can trace that this changed gene is coming from that ancestral gene. But those de novo genes, you cannot do this. And here is the result. Humans have more than 1,700 de novo genes. or novel genes that cannot be traced to any of their hypothesized ancestral forms. And this is confirmed again by proteomics. So when they're talking about, when evolutionary biologists are talking about humans and chimps coming from the same common ancestor, is there really enough time for more than 1,700 genes to arrive completely from nothing, because from no ancestral gene? And the mechanism they are proposing for this is that there are intergenic genes or intergenic genetic spaces between genes that produce proteins, and they say that they are, bombarded by random mutations, and by chance start codons will appear, and by chance end codons will appear, and by chance a promoter will appear, and by chance everything in the gene is written, and wow, it becomes a functional gene. And the absurdity of this argument is that to find a functional gene in the space of possibilities, for example, if you have a 150 nucleotide gene, a gene that has 150 letters out of the 4 possible letters in genetics, this is a chance of one possible functional gene versus 10 to the power 77 possible combinations. And then the question is, even if you are lucky with one gene, can you be very lucky with 1,700 genes? And even if you are lucky with 1,700 genes, these places that are in the genetic code that have been bombarded so heavily to produce those genes, have they been doing nothing before? Well, the ENCODE program and the ENCODE project and other studies show that the intergenic genetic space is not just doing nothing, to the extent that when it is bombarded this way, nothing will happen to the creature, because this myth of junk DNA is getting smaller and smaller with time. So there is not actually junk DNA. So if 1,700 genes are lost from a creature, this is definitely going to kill the creature. It's not going to cause a chimp human ancestor to become human from one side and a chimp from the other side. It's going to destroy it. Those creatures that will suffer from this kind of genetic disruption will definitely not develop into anything, will just die. And even if we assume that they will live, now we need to ask the question, so this new protein is developed. How will it get integrated into the system of the living creature? Because the living creature is a system. For this protein to be developed and, precipitates into one cell, this protein needs to be identified by the system, that it is good, for example, to be transported and put in the eye or in the leg or in the stomach or in the lining of the intestine or in a specific place. Just the very development of the gene that develops the protein causes nothing. It has to go into the regulatory mechanism, and it has to go into organ forming, and it has to go into become part of the system. So this novelty is essentially not explained at all by the theory. And the novelty all over the history of life is not explained by the theory. As I was saying, protocells to eukaryotes, prokaryotes to eukaryotes, eukaryotes to multicellular organisms, the novel body plans that we've seen in those multicellular organisms, the development or appearance of sexual reproduction, mammals with placental reproduction. We cannot explain the Cambrian explosion. We cannot explain all those predominantly missing ancestral lineages. We cannot understand, as I was saying, how does this act together to become part of a global system. We do not understand how this is homogeneous with the fact that the genetic system itself does not welcome mutations and mutes them and gets rid of them. And we generally know that mutations are typically deleterious, but even if they are beneficial, as we were saying, and they are taking place of existing genes, then this by its own will kill the organism, actually. We know, because we know, according to more and more research, that the majority of the DNA is essentially being discovered over and over again that it is beneficial, we know that even some adaptations that we have heard about, like lactose persistence in human beings, does not look like being random events at all, especially that they arise like by 3 different paths. We notice that very efficient mechanisms are included in creation, and if this is all a product of randomness, we do not expect this kind of efficiency to exist, right or not? And then when we look at something like human beings, which is something like Muller also talked about when you hear his speech, we find that something like language or culture cannot be explained by evolution. Human intellect, we are light years away from chimps and gorillas. So how come this is the case? How come we are ruling the planet? How come we have free will? All of those questions lead us to the state that we are in, which is that evolution, the evolutionary mechanism that relies on random mutations and natural selection and proposing common universal descent, is not a credible mechanism. Why is it not credible? Because number one, it assumes that randomness is driving the whole show. And number two, that it is assuming, or it's proposing, that natural selection, which is totally blind, can direct the randomness towards creating all this novelty. And now evolutionary biologists need to answer to their own literature, to their own top scientists who are saying that the theory is not adequate, and who are saying that other mechanisms should be proposed. But the mechanisms that they are proposing are quite theoretical. They cannot justify still the novelty with those mechanisms. So we are looking really at a theory in peril, a theory that has denounced its past as being not explanatorily adequate and did not yet draw its future. So I will stop at this point, and if you have questions, please do post your questions on the live chat. So, and I will be picking up the questions and answering them live. So go ahead. So, Salam, Darth. All right, if you have a question, just go ahead. I actually have a question actually that I have received by email. So it says, is de novo gene formation and orphan genes? Let me write it for you on the screen. It says, is de novo gene formation and orphan genes an evidence that novelties can be obtained randomly? Actually, it is an evidence to quite the contrary. So when you find those de novo genes, number one, it tells you that the evolutionary mechanism is not what is popularized, because the theory has always been popularizing that you have an existing gene and there is just one mutation, and this one mutation might give an advantage, and then it will be picked by natural selection. But when you're looking at de novo gene, which means it does not have an ancestor, it means that you will need to write the whole gene, including what makes it a gene, from scratch. And just thinking of this within the probability space is completely ridiculous. And then thinking that it can integrate with the system of the living thing makes it not only ridiculous but absurd. So I have another question from Mahasha Forshan. Okay, so he says, what if we take animals old, that's 100 years old, and try to form a new species? Will it work or not? I don't understand what you mean by taking animals old, or 100 years old. The age of the animal does not make a difference, because, you know, for any mutation to make a difference, the mutation has to happen in the germ line. The mutation has to happen to the sperm or the egg. Because, for example, if you are a grown-up and a mutation happens in your body, this mutation, God forbid, might cause you cancer, for example, in a specific part of the body. But if you conceive, if you have children, the children will not have the cancer, because what matters is the genetics of your sperm and of the mother's egg. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has caused that sperms, for example, that have genetic defects will typically be weak or bad sperm. So, and maybe that is why there are those millions upon millions of sperm that are found in the male ejaculate. So that the best sperm will reach the ovum, and this best sperm is typically one that is healthy and does not have mutations and does not have defects. So if you bring a creature within its lifetime and it suffers mutations, nothing big will happen. And this is one of the things they talk about, so many mutations happening every day to the body. That doesn't, all of this doesn't make any difference. Only the mutations that happen to the germline makes a difference. And then there is this marvelous process of the ovum selecting the best sperm, and this is the one that is going to cause the baby. And it's typically the healthiest. I have another question from Darth Zeme. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that well. He says, have you read Brother Shuaib's book? If yes, what are your thoughts? So I had a discussion with, I think you're referring to Dr. Shuaib Malik. I have had a discussion with him, and he sent me his paper that he had prior to the book. And I also watched some prolonged explanations of his arguments. And according to him, reading the paper was enough. The paper itself is lengthy enough. And I did that. And I told him that I have those objections. Essentially, his book is defending the theory and trying to reconcile the theory with Islam. So his book is essentially more a theological argument rather than an argument to the theory. So my objections that I told him in writing is the following. Number one, you are trying to reconcile with Islam a theory that is definitely not having a good standing at the time being. Number two, careful investigation of the theory shows that it is essentially false, or maximum hypothesis that it is being written. It is something that has been proposed 160 years ago by Darwin, and it is not the same theory of Darwin anymore. Mendelian inheritance came into place, genetics came into place, population genetics came into place, and as I have just showed you in the, I've just shown you in the entry presentation, up until 2016, the very evolutionary biology community is not satisfied with this theory. So number three, we should not try to reconcile a theory that is not even a theory with good credentials with Islam, apart from having real problems with his arguments. I have just published a video yesterday, and the video is talking about why I think, apart from my scientific criticism to the theory that you can see through the course, through the On Evolution series, through Evolution is False series, I am also having the opinion that this theory is contradictory to theology, is contradictory to the Quran and even to other books revealed by God. And if you would like to look at this argument, I would ask you please to check out this video that I have published yesterday. You can, it's the last one published on the channel. You can check it out and you will find why I think that evolution is contradictory to the Quran, and this is how the video looks like. It's okay, it's evolution and theology. Sorry. It's evolution and I don't know why this. Yeah. Okay. So it is evolution and theology, the Quran and evolution. And I'm arguing there that evolution is not at all consistent with the Quran. Okay, so let's go to the next question. Yeah, more about Dr. Shuaib. I asked Dr. Shuaib publicly to have nice discussion about his book. After I have read his paper and listened to the description of his book, I told him, if you agree to the public discussion, I will read your 250-page book and I will discuss every argument that you have made there. But he did not go for the discussion. I don't know why. If he thinks it's the truth, he should go for it. And if we are all looking for the truth cannot be shy of discussion. This is what the truth is all about. The truth does not fear discussion. So if somebody here knows Dr. Shuaib, I'm welcoming to have this discussion anyway. I debate atheists, evolutionary biologists, and people from other religion. I'm very fine with doing online debates. Okay, there's the next question also from Darth, says, also, what's the evolutionist explanation of why there are different animal species from the same family evolving differently, even though there is no separation of environment? This is one of the challenges to the theory. So the fact that they evolve is essentially a presupposition from a common ancestor. The fact that anything evolves, as I have given in the presentation, from a less complex to a more complex organism is counterintuitive in the first place. So as I was saying, if you start from unicellular organisms, there is no justification for having multicellular organisms, because unicellular organisms and even the simpler unicellular organisms are more successful. Humans will die very easy if you have a catastrophe, but bacteria will not even worry about it. You know, bacteria will just survive and they will continue multiplying. Even when we try to kill them, they don't. So why is there all of this diversity? Why is there all of this beauty? Why would there be an animal that is extremely beautiful, for example? Why would be an animal that is extremely colorful? Okay, there are so many mechanisms that can justify sexual selection. But this beauty says that the designer is a beautiful designer. There is no explanation. They will tell you there is a niche and this animal filled the niche. Okay, how did it fill the niche? Random mutations caused it to have little advantages for the niche, and then natural selection picked those advantages, and then it drifted away from its species, etc. Again, a very lame excuse. We have Tofu saying, Assalamu alaikum, alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah, brothers and sisters in the beautiful deen of Allah. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the channel. He says, what if we take bones that are 100 years old, this is Mahasha Fortune again, and try to form a new species and mix with other chemicals? No, we can't, because essentially genetics are driving things, not the okay, so bones and structures and organs are what we call phenotypes, okay? And phenotypes are the expressions of the genes. So no matter what you do with the bones and the organs, it doesn't make a difference. So if, for example, you lose a limb, or you lose an arm, or you have a prosthetic, okay, or somebody loses eyesight in an accident, and then you have a baby, the baby will have nothing of this affecting him. because it did not affect your genetics. It needs to affect your genetics to, and not only your genetics, it needs to affect the genetics of your sperms or of the ovum of the mother to have any effect. So genetic engineering is always about changing the germline, the sperms and the ova. Okay. Yeah. So Tofu says, I agree, true prevails. Yes, I agree. So I hope Dr. Shuaib, because he is popularizing this theory and claiming that it's okay with Islam, to have this open debate. He goes to many interviews about people who are enthusiastic about his content. I'm wondering why he doesn't do debates, especially that his content is very controversial. I only have good ideas about people. So if the intent is protecting the faith of Muslims who are affected by the theory of evolution, and he's afraid that this is going to take them away from their faith, and they fall for the atheist, arguments that evolution means that there is no God, and he wants to say that evolution is driven by God, the Darwinian mechanism is essentially driven by God and guided by God, and hence you can be a Muslim and an evolutionist in the same time. Okay, maybe the intent is good, but we do not take false theories and reconcile them with our religion unless they become facts and unless they become truthful. The very leaders of the evolutionary biology, the big shots, are saying that the mechanism is not adequate. So we shouldn't be doing that. This is very dangerous, both to our scientific mentality and to our theological world viewpoint. We should be looking for the truth, not reconciling falsehood with our absolute truth, which is Islam. This is very dangerous. Okay, so be grateful is key. Salam, brother Ahmad. Do you like your content? And then the Lord, Jazakallah khairan, my brother, and thank you for being here. Kaif Ali, Assalamu alaikum. Is a fossil record true? The word fossil record means that you find fossils, and those fossils, you can arrange them chronologically by time. And when you arrange them chronologically by time, you should find many things. Number one, you should find that simpler organisms are older than more complicated organisms. And number two, you should find that they go into a gradient. So gradually from simple to more complex to more complex to more complex. And you should find that these steps are very small steps. So one thing that we find is that in general, the older you go, the simpler it is. This is the basic observation. It says something. It says nothing. But the second and third and fourth are not consistent with the theory of evolution. We do not find gradualism. We do not find proper lineages. We do not find innumerable transitionally forms, which was a requirement by Darwin. Darwin said, if this theory is to be true, we should find innumerable transitionary forms. Between this shape of an animal and this shape of an animal, should find so many transitions because it's random mutations. Just one change to one nucleotide, and then natural selection picking it. And the change is not necessarily a good change, but there are so many changes. One change by change, you should find the transition of an animal to a different form. So, for example, to have eyes, we should find so many transitions from very simple eyes to the eyes that we have, like the eye of the winging or the eye of the hawk or the eye of the bee, but we don't find that. Eyes, for example, abruptly appear in the fossil record in trilobites 540 million years ago. What's before that? Nothing. Creatures that do not see at all, just have photosynthetic, photosensitive spots. You know the sunflower, for example, that follows the sun. You have putative creatures that swim in the ocean that can respond to light, but they don't see an image, they don't have eyes. The first thing that we know is that we have trilobites. And I will try to show you an image of a trilobite so that you would appreciate it. Let me try to show you something here. How an eye of a trilobite, the first appearance of an eye in the fossil record, how does this look like? How do you expect it to look like? So let me show you this. It's very interesting. So here is, for example, Can I find the trilobite? Yeah. Here is the fossil of a trilobite eye. And you see how this eye looks like? It looks like, not sure if you see this. It looks like, do you see the trilobite eye? Yeah. The eye of a trilobite, it looks like the eye of a bee. You see, this is a complex eye. This is the first eye that appears in the fossil record. And this is completely not consistent with the theory of evolution. Just please go to the internet and Google trilobites and look at trilobite, the amazing things called trilobite eyes. And the theory of evolution gives you no explanation to this whatsoever. So the fossil record actually is against the theory of evolution. I am going to have on the channel one of the paleontologists. Paleontologists are those guys who dig out fossils and work on them scientifically. And due to his work in paleontology, he's a PhD in paleontology, he stopped being an atheist and he believed in God. And I'm going to have him on the channel in January, inshallah. So look out for that. Okay, then we have again Darth Zeme. He says, simple to complex. I have heard that some evolutionists, that the reason why evolution do this is so that organisms will eventually develop intelligence and sentience. The reason, evolution has no reason. Evolution doesn't think. Evolution is a natural theory. Okay, it follows naturalism. Naturalism, the basic premise of naturalism is that there is no intent whatsoever. And no mind that is pushing anything to anyway. So those arguments are actually against them. Okay, and then we have Khaled Assange, and may Allah bless you for all your efforts. Thank you, Khaled. May Allah bless you too, and we all meet in Jannah, inshallah. Zaina Fadl says, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And Atiqur Rahman says the same. Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Zaina says, may Allah reward you. Thank you very much. May Allah reward you too. Okay, Facebook user. Please, may you speak about the theory of chromosome 2 in humans being a result of fusion of 2 other chromosomes in chimps and gorillas. What do you make of that theory? Okay, so I would point you to a video on my channel, on this channel, which is called Adam or Ape. Okay, Adam or Ape. And I discussed the matter of chromosome 2. I will actually address human-chimp ancestry in this course later. But if you want to have more about that, you have a playlist called Man, where I am addressing the whole issue about the creation of humans and addressing the matter of human-chimp ancestry. And there is an episode on evolution, also addressing 2 episodes actually addressing humans. One addressing transhumanism, which is on Evolution 10, and another one addressing humans. I'm not sure, maybe it's on Evolution 3. I can check it for you now, but check that playlist called Man, and you will have plenty about that. And Adam or Ape is the video that you are going to look for that is discussing the matter of ancestry between humans and chimp ancestors. And I'm discussing this matter of chromosomal fusion. The argument in a nutshell is apes have 48 chromosomes, humans have 46. And the claim is that 2 of the chromosomes of apes fused into 1 chromosome for humans. And hence you have the difference in number. And the argument is, it happens today that chromosomal fusion can happen even to humans. So a sperm or an egg will have chromosomal fusion, and then you will have a child, for example, having 44 chromosomes. And what happens in this case? Number one, the sperms that have the chromosomal fusion are generally very weak sperms, and they typically do not make it to the egg. So even when chromosomal fusion happens, you don't have an embryo. And if it happens that fertilization happens with this kind of scenario, the resulting baby or the resulting human being might die. And if it doesn't die, it will have one of maybe 3 kinds of syndromes, okay? And those syndromes cause it to be infertile. He will not be able to have babies himself. And hence, the whole theory is based on very improbable assumptions. Just watch the video, and I will be doing more in the course. Okay. And then, yeah. Atiq Rahman says, microevolution turn into macroevolution, just need more time. Is this claim a fallacy, like appeal to probability? The claim is definitely a fallacy. Why? Because microevolution means this, like the examples, the silly examples that they give all the time. And I'll tell you why they are silly. They tell you, okay, we have moth, for example. Moth is like, looks like a butterfly, okay? And the moth has different colors, and if there is this environment, the moth with the brighter color will prevail, or the moth with the darker color will prevail. Good. This is microevolution in your opinion? Both the dark and the light color are available in the genetics of the moth. So nothing is happening, really. This is not evolution. This is just an expression of the best features in the environment. You can check that also on Evolution 2 and on the second episode of this course. Is Evolution True or False, session 2, where I'm discussing mutations. And the whole thing here is, let's say that suddenly we have an ice age. People who have in their genetics the ability to endure very cold weather, people who are living today in the Eskimo, will definitely have much better luck living this environment than people who are living at the equator today, than Africans or Indians living near the equator, okay? Or South Americans. And we will expect that the human race will become predominated by people who are very well equipped genetically to endure ice ages. And maybe the others will go extinct if not for the technology of the human race. If the human race is like any other animal, the kinds of the same animal that can endure only under warm weather might go extinct because they cannot live in the cold weather, while the other ones who are living in the cold weather will proliferate and will cover the whole place. And then within those animals, they will go to the different places, and within those different places, they will start expressing other genetic features, like if they are in a high place, on a low place, next to a river, close to the beach, etc. So you will find that the species will, by the time, look different. How different can it be? Look at the dogs that we have. Look, just by breeding dogs, we have things like Lulu dogs and we have things like bulldogs. They look very different, right? But they are dogs. Genetically, they are the same. They are dogs. So the trick is you cannot start from a dog and reach, I don't know, a pigeon or something. Okay? You will need to have so much novelty. And microevolution does not go this way. Microevolution starts from the existing gene pool and selects features. And maybe very small mutations will cause a new feature to arrive, but examples for that are very limited. And the creature remains the same. It doesn't become something else. Okay, we have Kaif Ali. Okay, evolution is false. Why science books teach it? Evolution is a philosophy. It's not a scientific theory per se. Evolution is the manifestation of a philosophy that teaches that nature has no mind behind it. And it is no secret that the scientific community is dominated by naturalism. Okay, so you cannot today, as a research graduate student, say in a research paper that the explanation is that this is designed by a creator. If you do this, you're kicked out. And please go and Google 2 movies. One is called Expelled and one is called No Intelligence Allowed. And you'll see very prominent examples for that. So if there is somebody at the gate who will not let anybody in, who will preach anything but naturalism as a basis for his ideas, then this is what you get. Textbooks that saying evolution is the only solution. And evolution will remain the only solution until an uprising happens in the science community, because this theory is really harmful. People like Dr. James Tour, for example, that I had on my channel. People like Dr. Fazrana, for example, that I had on my channel. People like all those guys in the ID community or in the challenging the theory of evolution, challenging that randomness cannot produce order, will become dominant. It's difficult, but truth at the end prevails. Tofu says, so true, and yet we are meant to believe that this gradual evolution has occurred without evidence of some of these questions. Yes, we are meant to believe this, and there is plenty of lying also happening. Got it, gives me thumbs up, yeah. David Zakaria says, I really like what you say, that we can find innumerable fossil records, which we should, but remember that the random mutations are transferred only by 50% generation by generation. Even if it's not like, for example, we should have a billion transitionary forms and we have 900 million, or we don't have 900 million, we don't have 500 million, we don't have a million, we don't have 100,000 even. I doubt if we even have 10,000. We only have the extant creatures, or the creatures that went extinct at a point of time. If you try to trace the lineage of any of those back to Luca, you will have very hard time. I am saying you cannot trace the lineage of a single creature that lives today back to Luca. If you find one, tell me. Darth says, is this why even some evolutionists go against gradualism, since there is just not even time for a single cell to develop all the complexity? Yes, they eventually had to say gradualism is not a condition. This is what I am saying. The foundations of the theory have gone down. The very foundations of the theory have gone down. So when they found that there is no gradualism, they said there is a mechanism called punctuated equilibrium. There is equilibrium, but there is glitches. Okay, good. You're just describing the fact. You're describing the fact that there is no gradualism. Now explain it. Explain how random mutation acted upon by natural selection can cause non-gradual changes. They will give you no explanation. This is why I'm saying over and over again, this theory is not a theory. It is a hypothesis in parallel. Okay, there's some discussion, and here we have the question is not the moth example came from a fake experiment? Yes, there has been forgery to this moth example, but logically the moth thing is possible. Okay, even if they this is one other there has not been probably a theory in the history of science that had so much fraud happening more than this theory. And this is why you have to be very careful when something, boom, they announce something. You have to be very careful, because in many cases they will announce something and it is fake and it is forgery. But okay, if you don't want to use the moth, you can use frogs with certain color or whatever. This is not the point. The point is that it's not possible to generate what you see around you using the mechanisms of this theory. And what is possible, which is very limited examples of microevolution, will not lead to novelty. It will not lead to novelty. You can have some changes due to mutation, but those changes that are due to the mutation cause loss of information. For example, the mouth parts of the dog are, protruded. They go like this. And this is controlled by a gene that controls bone development. If you break this gene, then you will have this development of the mouth or of the skull of the dog will not take place, and you will have dogs with, like bulldogs. This is loss of information. It's not novelty. Otangelo, how are you doing, Otangelo? Otangelo Grasso says, instructional complex information encoded in 33 genetic and 45 epigenetic codes, and signaling networks on a structural level in an integrated interlocked fashion explain organismal architecture. And then he says, and yet another unexpected finding from the study Species have very clear genetic boundaries, and there is nothing much in between. If individuals are stars, then species are galaxies. Yes, agree with you. This is, again, a problem with gradualism and a problem with integrating anything into the system of an organism. You have one mutation or another mutation and a third and a fifth mutation. All of them generate new proteins. So what? You have a protein into a system, the system does not know what to do about it. What is the logical consequence of this? This mutation will not be fixed in the environment. The individuals that have the mutation that cause this new protein will just dilute and dissolve in the population, and they will go nowhere. Okay. Okay. All right. Atiq Rahman says, thanks for accepting the question and answering. You're welcome, my friend. David says, got it. Okay. All right. These are discussions. And here we have, okay. I'm looking for what is the next question. So I have discussions on the chat. Sabu says, Salaam alaikum, brothers. Salaam alaikum. David is saying this also, is saying the genes are transferred only by 50% generation by generation with random mutations. Random mutations will almost disappear by 6th generation. They don't get preserved. So he says 100 divided by 2 and then divided by 2 and then divided by 2. Well, you don't even need to appeal to this division by 2 because you have things like, okay, so you have this formula, which is, it's called Haldane's formula, okay, that says that a new mutation will be fixed if this mutation, for example, gives a fitness advantage of 0.1%, for example, reproductive advantage, then the possibility of it, the probability of it to be fixed is 1 divided by 2 multiplied by this advantage. And it means that to be fixed, the mutation needs to occur if it's, for example, 1 over 1,000, it needs to occur 2,000 times. So essentially, and since mutations cause very small advantages, the odds are they will be lost anyway. The fixation of a beneficial mutation is extremely a difficult thing. So let's assume that even one dog or one lion gets a mutation that, it can do something marvelous. And the next thing is that a car runs over the dog. End of story for the mutation. Okay, it's a rabbit. And the next thing that a lion has eaten the rabbit. End of story for the mutation. Okay, the rabbit has mated and produced one offspring, and one lion ate the whole tribe of rabbits. End of story for the mutation. There are so many factors. And there are other rabbits that are born just running faster, regardless this one specific mutation in that rabbit. It didn't help him run faster, so the lion ate it anyway. So the whole matter of mutations getting fixed is really an issue. And I agree that the successive dilution of the mutation is also very versatile to kill anything that happens. So Darth says, aren't mutations usually detrimental to the health of any living being? Wouldn't a survival of the fittest be conservative and not be, let's try this combination? Of course, mutations are typically very deleterious. So when you get it, that's why the genetic system counteracts mutations. And if you look in the evolutionary literature, you will find that the majority of the mutations are deleterious. And then some are neutral, and then they say that a few can be beneficial, but they have very hard time giving examples. And when they give examples of a mutation, they say that this thing appeared new, then it has to be from a mutation. And then they have very hard time proving that it's from a mutation. And in the majority of the cases, it turns out that it was a feature that was just expressed under the right circumstances, and there is no mutation. Plenty of playing with words too. Got it says, okay, thank you for that. Don't know what is the good question to ask. Okay, you'll find good questions. Yeah, he says, so David says the percentage of saved mutations goes down and then they will be preserved to the next generation only if they occur in germ cells. So probability is not even real and they usually don't help to survive at all. Yes, I agree with all of that. Because number one, you have to, if a creature like the human being has 30 or 40 trillion cells, something, 10 trillion cells, the number is different according to where you're reading. Let's say 10 trillion cells, okay? And then only the sperms or the ovum are the ones that make a difference. And when you go, for example, for the sperms, they are produced by the millions. So the ones that have the mutation will not survive. They will not reach the egg. The other ones who are healthy will reach. So it's really the evolutionary theory is playing a game of luck that is very hard to deliver its proposal to anybody who has sense to scrutinize what they're saying. And at the end of the day, because of naturalism, it remains the one possibility. Because if you take intent and if you take intelligence and if you take design and if you take purpose out of the formula, what is left? You're only left with randomness and mechanistic processes. We know that mechanistic processes will not create things. We know that because we know the Newtonian laws of nature. We know it cannot create new things. So what is remaining? Random changes, because maybe randomness will deliver something. But then how will we be selected? Natural selection. So they are going into this circle, and they are imprisoning themselves. Prenom Nom says, Salaam alaikum, how can we refute the claim that phylogenetic trees can prove common descent? And is de novo gene formation and orphan genes an evidence that novelties can be obtained randomly? So we partially answered that at the beginning. I think you were not there. So phylogenetic trees are not evidence for anything. Phylogenetic trees are classifications. So okay, so phylogenetic trees, why are they not evidence? I'll tell you. So number one, how do you draw the phylogenetic tree is the first question. Okay, so you need to draw the phylogenetic tree using something. So let's say you draw the phylogenetic tree based on the similarity, how the creatures that look more like each other, you group them together and then you do hierarchical groupings. But then you will be struck by the fact that when we knew genetics, we expected that this similarity in the shape will lead to a similarity in the genetics. And people started doing phylogenetic trees based on genetics. So for example, they pick one gene or one gene group, for example, cytochrome C, which has specific features that makes it good for doing phylogenetic trees. And they draw the tree. And they are struck by the fact that the tree that they draw based on the genetics do not match the one that are based on the morphology, on the shapes. And then if you try cytochrome B, for example, and you try to draw a different genetic tree, a different phylogenetic tree, you will get a different tree. And if you do full genome mapping and you try to draw the tree, you will get a different tree. So actually, phylogenetic trees actually are against evolution, not with evolution. And there are plenty of contradictions there. And then let's say that phylogenetic trees did not have this problem. This is a critical problem, but let's say that they do not have it. Now, if they do not have it, we have another problem, which is that phylogenetic trees they do not explain novelty. So you have those genes that come out of nowhere. Okay. Why would you only use the genes that have the similarity to draw the tree while not accounting for the genes that do not have in your ideas ancestry? So for example, the example that I made for the human genome, which has 1,700 genes that you cannot trace them back to anything. Okay, so how come you are putting the human with the chimp, while the humans have 1,700 genes that you cannot trace to a common ancestor between humans and chimps? You're just arbitrarily doing this. So if you are doing this because of similarity, and not accounting for the differences, then this is, let's say, like we are categorizing, for example, a radio with a television as equipment that receive signals and give information to the listener or to the viewer. But then, assuming that they are both coming, let's say that televisions and radios in the future will be self-replicating. Okay, let's say that, like nanobots and robots. Okay, so if you have a television at home, you can ask it to create a new copy of itself. Okay, and people have televisions and radios and CD players and this kind, MP3 players, MP4 players, and then somebody would like to draw them in a classification. So he would say, okay, an MP3 player and an MP4 player are more close to each other, and then a CD player, and then a DVD player, and then a radio set, and then a TV set, etc. Okay, and you do these hierarchies where things that are more similar come together, and things that are less similar go. And then somebody will will expect that this is has to be due to similarity in the electronic board structure. But then when you look at the TV and on the radio and on the CD player, you find that the TV has circuitry that is very different from that of the radio, because it needs to process images, for example, and because it is picking up signals at a different electromagnetic place, etc. You understand that, yes, they have similarity, but the novelty in the TV versus that in the radio is very big. It is inconceivable that a common ancestor to the self-replicating radio and the self-replicating TV has generated both, and a radio came, for example, both, for example, are coming from a very simple, bulb-related, the old bulb technology, okay, device that created transistors by accident, and then arranged them into circuit boards by accident, and then some boards self-replicated into the radio, and some other boards self-replicated due to errors into TVs. And that, I think this would be quite ridiculous. So designing things or putting things into hierarchies based on how similar they are, to me, especially with the very deep problems in phylogenetic trees drawn by evolutionary biologists, would rather suggest a common designer rather than common ancestry. And we will go into this topic in more detail later in the course, because now we are more into the molecular level. But we will reach to that point where we will have some fun with the with phylogenetic trees. Okay, so what next? Randomness of the gaps. I totally agree with you, is the answer I usually got from them. It's all randomness because they have nothing else. David Zachariah says, about fossil record, the creatures who are the links should be in a billion times more than... Exactly, because they say that 99.999 whatever % of the creatures have gone extinct. So if we have, I don't know, 8 million creatures that we know about today, we should find 8 billion creatures in the fossil record. We have nothing of the sort. The creatures they have survived, which is live with us, which are not just fossil record. Yeah. All right. And then Darth says, wouldn't the platypus be problematic for them to categorize? Absolutely. Things like the platypus, things like this, always surprise them. And they have all those explanations like convergent evolution, like atavism, like all these things we are going to discuss also in the course. And I'm really surprised why they use those terms, because those terms are against the theory, not wisdom. If they say, okay, the same features evolutionary occurred on different lineages, completely independent from each other, this is not consistent with your theory that says that randomness is generating everything. Randomness just doesn't happen over and over again, generating very complex structures over and over again on very independent lineages. It doesn't make sense. Muslim Wolfie says, winter equestrian. Question. No, he is also winter equestrian. And he says, a question. Many interpret one of the hadiths as saying that Adam, peace be upon him, was 60 cubits tall. And since then, humans began increasing in height. Couldn't someone say that this is a type of evolution? Well, I have a suggestion. So in a previous live stream, I said that Muslim scholars and Muslim scientists and creationist scientists from all over the world, even from different religions, need to come together and find a scientific explanation, and Muslims need to look at Quran and Hadith and Sunnah very well and see what is theologically acceptable or not. So let me take this question, for example. When you look accurately to the Hadith, you will say, خلق الله آدم على صورته 60 ذراعا في السماء. Okay? And almost in the majority of the riwayat of the hadith, you will find this 60 ذراعا أو 60 ذراعا في السماء. So my point, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, is that Adam was 60 cubits tall when he was in heaven. Because when you look at it over and over again, you find this word في السماء. Okay? And we know that on Judgment Day, when we are resurrected, we will be much taller and much bigger than we look on earth. So it looks consistent. It looks consistent, okay, to me. Is this a proper explanation? People who are more professional with explaining the Quran and Sunnah need to look seriously into those things and consider it. However, when Adam went down to earth or left Jannat Adan, was he the same length, or was he as tall as us today, or was he taller? As I expect he was taller, because then we have descriptions of Qawm Aad, for example, etc., that says that they were bigger in their body. All right. But I don't think as big as 60 cubits. I don't think. And I think my point of view that the proper explanation for the hadith, 60 ذراعا في السماء, is the keyword. في السماء is the keyword, in the sky, in heaven. David Zakaria says that Adam was not a monkey. Yeah, nothing in our religion says that he was ever a monkey. So yeah. He says, so Darth says that he got an explanation like that, so I offered you a different explanation. And Allahu A'lam. Okay. Okay, so Muslim Wolfie Winter Equestrian says this seems to correspond with the view of some scholars. I'm not aware that others have the same view, but probably there would be, and I would agree with them. We're told that at some point it sort of explains the mythological giants. Yeah, but I don't think we have mythological giants would fit properly here. We need to look in Quran and Sunnah as they are, unless we find archaeological evidence that we're humans that are that tall. But probably I would go rather for the explanation that I have said. Okay, Atiq Rahman says, junk DNA may come back again. Please tell something about that. Well, there is no junk DNA. Allah al-Hakim will not create creatures with junk DNA. Junk DNA is an argument from ignorance. Why did they use this argument? Because their theory predicts it. Their theory says that genetic composition is a product of random events. So what happens when you have random events that are predominantly rubbish? You will have DNA that is predominantly rubbish. So this ENCODE project, which happened during the last couple of decades, and revealed that what was marked as random and as junk DNA is not really junk and has plenty of functionality, especially in regulation, disease combating, cancer combating, etc., expression of genes, causing things like acceptation, etc. Revealed that I am sure that with time there will not be any DNA that is left to be called junk. Muslim Wolfie says, but it said that a human can't be that tall because of the area of volume ratio is gonna be way more different, and that the weight might be too much, if you know what I mean. Yes, this is something. I told you a different explanation. Yeah. Okay. Yes, I agree with you. Okay. Darth says junk DNA is just a label for the genes that they assumed had no function or is no longer functional. I agree with you, and they discovered that many of it does have function. Okay. Muslim Wolfie says history not a problem to me. I believe God. Yes, God can do anything. It doesn't include creating junk DNA. The actions of God will always be consistent with God being Al Hakim. And Al Hakim means the one who puts things in its right order, in its right place. So God will not create junk. Okay. Prenom Nom says, is de novo gene formation and orphan genes and evidence that novelties can be obtained randomly? No, it's evidence against novelties being obtained randomly. Because again, the theory of evolution expects that small mutations take place in sequence. So to have a completely novel gene out of nowhere means you need to, again, find an astronomical probability to create a gene that has benefit. Again, I'm talking about 1 to the 10 to the power 77. 1 to the 10 to the power 77 is a horrible number. Okay? It's more than the atoms in the universe. You're looking for one atom across the whole universe, almost. It's ridiculous. And then if you have it, then the system will not know what to do with it. This is how absurd this is. So random mutations cannot be the function that generates this. What would be the function that generates this? It has to be a guided mechanism by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, either direct intervention or mechanisms that we do not know about. We know, for example, that the 1700 novel genes, the 1700 plus novel genes in the human genome are not because mutations took place from a common ape ancestor. It is because human beings are novel creations. Because God created us de novo. So David says, when you go to the room where the complex order is established, how do we know it has established or was established by someone? Very simple. The order already points out to the intelligence which has established it. Yes. Order points to somebody who has ordered it. Completely true. All right. Yes, that's what order is. I agree with you. Atiq Rahman says, in biology, there are two concepts of function, one selected effect, and I think he is going to say something else. All right. So I think we will wrap this up in 10 minutes if there are not so many much more. What textbooks do you recommend in evolutionary biology? No, I would recommend that you read the papers themselves, because the textbooks are so messed up and so full of fallacies. I would recommend that you go to the papers themselves. Okay, there are, of course, hundreds of thousands of papers out there, which I would recommend that you just follow the evolutionary course that we're doing here. And we're doing it slowly but surely, starting from the molecular level up. And you will be finding me, pointing to papers there. And just in case you guys, you don't know how to subscribe to the course, I'll just show you in a couple of minutes. By the way, everything that I'm doing is free, so I have no financial interest at all that anybody would subscribe to anything. But let me just show you this. Yeah, the science papers, yes. And when you look at the papers, don't just read the intro or the title. You need to read the abstract and have a look at some of the text and at the conclusion. And in many cases, you'll find the title of the paper not the same as what is in the abstract, and what's in the abstract not the same as the real conclusions. It's sad, but this is how it is. Let me show you very fast how you can do this. So yeah, I'll show you the how to engage with the course. So, okay, let me share my screen. Okay, so here you go. You will go to findingtruthchannel.com. Okay, do you see it in front of you? Yeah, findingtruthchannel.com. And you will go to the registration, so you can register. Okay, so when you go to the registration, you'll just fill in username, first name, last name, email address, and pick a password. And when you are done with that, you can also go to courses. Is evolution true or false? Just make sure when you do the registration, the system will send you a confirmation email. You need to click it so that you are activated on the newsletter and broadcast list. Okay, and then you can go to is evolution, all courses, is evolution true or false? And you can say start now. Okay, and it's zero, price is zero. You'll just, if you are logged in, it will not ask you your username, but since now I'm not logged in, if you put a username and a password here, it will also register you, but your information will not be complete. Okay, so you'd rather do it the other way, register and then enroll to the course. After you enroll to the course, you will be on the course. And when you are on the course, you have here the lessons. Here's the curriculum, for example. Here are the weeks. So week 1, you have a session, material, live stream, and a quiz. All of this will be unlocked when you are subscribed. Okay, so for example, this is the week 5, the previous one. You will see the session, which will take you to the YouTube, but it will also give you some remarks on it and how you will find the articles. So this is session 5, for example. Here is the session. Here are some remarks. And here is, for example, I'm referring in the session to another video with Dr. James Tour, for example, and I'm referring to it. You will find the article. If you look here to the left, you'll find the article. And in the article, these are things that I write myself, okay? You will find I'm explaining the thing in text. And after I explain everything, you will find me referring to a paper or a scientific article. And I actually only refer to the very material of evolutionary biology, what they have written themselves. And it's obviously ridiculous because they are writing things against themselves, but it's peer-reviewed articles. Sometimes some of the articles are written by people who have later said they are creationists, but the article is peer-reviewed. They can challenge it. This is an article from Nature, for example, Nature magazine. You will find here illustrations. This is another article from Nature magazine. This is from physics.org, etc. I will point you to some YouTube videos from sometimes from scientists or science explainers. This is from Science Direct. I give you more illustrations, etc. So it's really very important that you would come, for example, to the next live stream having done this process. You have gone to the session, you have gone to the article, you have gone to the supplementary material, maybe answer the quiz, and you are all set. Okay. So, for example, if I take you out of this, let me log in here, for example. Yeah. So now I'm logged on. If I now go to the course, I would also like you really to answer. You find everything unlocked. So, for example, when I go to the quiz, okay, so you'll find the quiz. It has questions. So you start. It has a pass grade. You can take and retake it. It has a counter. What are motor proteins? For example, if you do like this, and you go to the next question, etc., and it will tell you if you are right or wrong. Okay, and it will give you. You go to next. Okay, you answer like this. Next. Okay, at the end it will tell you if you have done right or wrong. Okay, and okay. Of course, I'm not answering correctly now. and you say finish, and you say okay, it will tell you how much did you write, did you do right or wrong, and then you can go into a review. It will tell you this was the right answer, and it can give you explanations also, etc. So it's nice to go to the course in its structured way. We are only in the 6th week, and this is probably going to be like 20 weeks or something, and we're going to take it slowly but surely, and I'm flexible on this, so I can change the topics or add more into the topics. So I hope you really follow it and enjoy it. Okay. And okay, we'll be finishing now. What are the current theories regarding evolution? Names, I mean, string theory, quantum loop gravity for physics. So the name of the current theory is Extended Modern Evolutionary Synthesis, abbreviated EES. Okay. Definitely going to do this later. Okay, please do. Tofus, mashallah, tabarakallah, excellent learning opportunity. Hope you benefit from it, brother. Jazakumullah khairan. May Allah reward you for this and grant you Jannah. Ameen, ya Rabb, and you with us, inshallah. We all be there together. Please don't show us the admin page. That was a mistake. Okay. I'll cut the admin page out of the live stream later. General question: do you think that scientists will someday completely abandon Darwinian evolution? As long as atheism and naturalism is sitting there, they will just keep rewriting the theory. They're rewriting it for the 4th time. I hope they give up at a point, but they just don't seem to. This is a philosophical battle. So things like Darwinian theories will go away when the battle between philosophical naturalism and belief in God settles. Assalamu alaikum, Badriya. Welcome to the channel. And Jazakumullah khairan for the questions and answers. Thank you. Jazakumullah khairan, everybody. I hope you have made benefit out of this. Please do recommend the course to others and come again to the next live stream. I will be probably posting a new session this coming week, probably to wrap up the matter of novelty. And the next one will be probably about something called ERV, endogenous retroviruses, which is also some of the strong evidence that evolutionary biologists and evolutionary paradigm people put for supporting their theory. And then we go back to the enzymes, and then we start moving, inshallah, forward with unicellular organisms and multicellular organisms. Please be here for the coming live stream. I hope it's next Saturday. There is a very interesting live I am having tomorrow with a PhD medical doctor about the ingenuity of design in the human skeleton. He is an orthopedic specialist, and he teaches in the university, Dr. Amr Arafa. Please also join us tomorrow, and you can also ask questions. I'm sure you will enjoy it. Thank you, everybody, and Jazakumullah khairan, and may we all be together in paradise, in Jannah, inshallah. I'll now put the extra so I can put some links to other people, and do remember to like and share this video and suggest the channel to others so that the Google algorithm will promote it. And see you soon. Peace be upon you all, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.